Howdy Tamers. Now, I've mentioned countless times before that my main deck for the Digimon TCG is of course the Vortex Guardian, which is the Zephagamon deck. So it started from the starter deck for Digimon Liberator. Now, I do try to build a lot of decks because I like to learn different play styles, and a little bit ago people were talking about how the adventure deck could work with a Zephagamon top end. Now this was immediately appealing to me because back when I was first putting together my Zephagamon deck, I ran the Mega Gargo Ace from the Double Typhoon Advanced Starter deck because it had Reboot, and I really liked how Reboot works with the starter deck Zephagamon, which is actually the Zephagamon that I don't run in my main deck. So I was kind of happy to play a different Zephagamon and see if that starter deck one works a little better in a different deck. So this is of course because the adventure starter deck comes with an Agumon that has the inheritable of Reboot. So the reason that works is because the starter deck Zephaga has the effect of whenever a Digimon unsuspends, it gets plus 3000 DP and isn't affected by your opponent's Digimon's effects until the end of the turn. So if you time it right and you always are unsuspending it in every turn or unsuspending something in every turn, you effectively have a more or less permanently protected from Digimon effects Digimon. Of course, you are still affected by option cards like Chaos Degradation or Heaven's Judgment, but for Digimon effects, you're basically immune. So I kind of put together the starter decks from the Adventure starter deck, and of course the Zephagamon starter deck being the Zephagamon from the starter deck. So I just want to show off just what I've done with this deck. I know that other people have been running this deck. It's not a unique idea that I've had, but I tried to put my own unique spin on it and make it a little bit different from the decks that other people are running for the Vortex Adventure. So first of all, our egg is just the Sunamon egg, which has the inherited effect of on deletion you may return one Digimon card with the adventure trait from trash to your hand. This is a pretty good card because a lot of the time you do still want the rest of your deck, and the majority of the deck is still the adventure trait, so this is still a good egg just to help you rebuild. Of course it won't get any of your Digimon that don't have the adventure trait, but I run 8 Digimon that don't have the adventure trait, so a lot of the time I do have something to return. So of course we have the main point of the deck, which is we have 4 of the starter deck Agumon, which I don't use the Your Turn. It doesn't work at all in this because I don't run any War Greymon. It just basically warps to a War Greymon if you meet those conditions. As you can see, I don't have War Greymon in this deck, so that Agumon's not that useful for me in terms of that Your Turn. The main thing I want in this deck is the inheritable, which is Reboot, which means that it unsuspends this Digimon during your opponent's unsuspend phase, which is basically the point of the deck. As I mentioned, the starter deck Zephagamon. Then we have 8 other rookies. We have the Palmon, of course. I have to have Palmon in as many decks as possible. If it's feasible to put a Palmon in a deck, you better believe it that I'm absolutely going to do so. This Palmon is very useful because of its on play, so you trash 1 card with the adventure trait in hand to draw 2, so it means that if I don't have a Zephagamon in my hand or I don't have any of the top end, I can basically trash one of any adventure trait. So any Tamer or the option card, they all have adventure traits, so I can trash one of those to draw 2, so it helps me find my pieces. So that's pretty great in itself because I can potentially draw into any of my other pieces that don't necessarily have the adventure trait. It also has a pretty decent inheritable, which is all turns it gets plus 1000 DP, just makes my stack a little bit bigger, which is very much appreciated. Our last rookie is Biomon, which can be useful, but also can be kind of dangerous, and the reason for that is if I use its on play, I reveal the top 3 cards, I get 1 Digimon with the adventure trait and 1 such tamer card or option card. So if I'm hunting for a Zephagamon or any of my non-adventure pieces, I don't really want to use the on-play. If I don't have any in my hand, I'm probably going to just evolve in Raising, for the reason being I don't want to risk just bot decking the main point of the deck. So while this deck can work without having any level 6s because of all the abilities to give Alliance in this deck, I don't really want to risk getting rid of my top end from this card. So it is risky to use, but if I am struggling to find any of my adventure pieces or tamer cards or option cards or what have you, then I'll use the on-play. So it very much depends on what I have in my hand, whether or not I'm going to evolve in Raising with this one, or if I'm going to actually just hard play it and get the adventure pieces that way and risk bottom decking cards that I kind of want in my hand. Of course, the other thing I do want to do is I tend to want to have Agumon in Raising, just because it means that I can promote that and evolve up with the stack. I don't have to risk losing my Agumon when I'm trying to evolve it up to my Zephagamon, for example. Next we have the level 4s, so we have Kabuterimon. It's very standard. When digivolving, you can play a tamer if you have 1 or fewer tamers, so it has to play an adventure tamer, but it's a pretty tamer heavy deck, so it is important to get those tamers out here. The other reason being it has Piercing as an inheritable. This is exceptionally useful, especially if you are vortexing into your opponent's Digimon, because, again, the top end, they all have Vortex. So that means I can get quite a few checks in just by having a Digimon with Piercing and Vortex through my opponent's Digimon. That's pretty much the same as my Zephagamon deck. It's important to have that Piercing inheritable. So if I want a stack to evolve into Zephagamon, the ideal stack for me is Agumon, obviously. Then we have the Kabuterimon with Piercing. One of the level 5s doesn't matter, they both have the same inheritable. And then Zephaga. And then of course I'm vortexing, and then because it has Reboot, at the start of my opponent's turn in the unsuspend phase, it unsuspends and I have protection. So ideal stack is Kabuterimon on Agumon, but if I can't get to it, it's not the worst thing, because the other level 4s do allow me to effectively jump to a level 5. So we have both the Togemon and the Birdramon are more or less similar, the only difference being the inheritable for Togemon being this Digimon gets plus 1000 DP on the all turns, and the Birdramon is just your turn, it gets plus 2000 DP. So it's bigger on my turn than if I had Togemon, but the Togemon is the all turns instead, which is kind of useful, especially if I want to have a bigger field or more DP on my Digimon. So again, both Togemon and Birdramon have the on-play and when digivolving. If I have tamers with the adventure trait and it adds up to having 3 or more colours, this Digimon may digivolve into a Digimon card with the adventure trait in hand without paying the cost. So while I do like the when digivolving of playing a tamer, and I do love the inheritable of having Piercing because of Vortex, of course, I do still like the ability to effectively evolve very quickly to level 5 for free. So those are just my 10 level 4s. It's pretty standard in terms of ratios to have 10 level 4s, so I went with that. Then I have my level 5s, which are kind of similar. They have the same inherited effect of having Alliance, which means that if I am vortexing especially, I do get more than 1 check if it has Piercing. So that's pretty useful, especially because, again, you can probably see I also have Medieval in this deck, which already has Alliance. So if I have a pretty big board, and with Adventure, you kind of do have a pretty big board if you're playing an Adventure deck, so you can kind of suspend multiple things to do multiple checks. The first time I ran this at a locals, I actually won the locals, which was surprising because it was the first time running this deck. I was kind of like, I just came back from regionals, I wanted to play a different deck, sort of. I guess it's different-ish, it's different adjacent, and I won fairly easily because I just suspended basically my entire board and did by like 4 checks, I think. I had a pretty big board at the time, so that's pretty useful. Again, especially if the Digimon attacking is vortexing and it has piercing. So many checks and a very big field means a very high DP, so you're not going to risk losing your Digimon to an Omni-X Insecurity or something along those lines, because it's going to be above 20,000 anyway. So of course we have the on-play and when digivolving, suspend all of their Digimon that has 5,000 DP or lower, and then for every 2 colours that my tamers have, return one of their suspended Digimon to the bottom of the deck. So if there's a suspended ace, you can bot deck a suspended ace, get the memory back. That's pretty handy. It also has the your turn once per turn. When your other Digimon are played or digivolved, if any of them have the adventure trait, one of your Digimon gains alliance for the turn. So you can give your Digimon alliance multiple times. If it has alliance from the inheritable, it also has that alliance as well. And if it's medieval, you get the alliance that it just already comes with. So that's basically 3 alliance, 1 from the inheritable, 1 from medieval, and 1 that you would get from this your turn once per turn. So very handy. Then we have the Mega Carboteriumon, which is a little bit similar to the Lilymon, but it has the on-play and when digivolving of 1 of your Digimon suspends, so you could get that immunity if your Zephagamon's not already immune. And then for every 2 colours that the tamers with the adventure trait have, suspend 1 of your opponent's Digimon. So you could evolve into this, suspend something, and then you could evolve or play Lilymon to bot deck the thing that you just suspended. So you can kind of use them together. I did look at other Adventure Vortex lists just to see what other people are doing. I did see some people were also running the Garudamon. I feel like 8 level 5s is fine for this, and also the level 5 Garudamon is red, so I can only evolve Medieval Gallant on top of it, and I kind of want to prioritize having the starter deck Zephaga, as that's the most important piece in my opinion. So those are my level 5s. Next to level 6s, this is the Vortex part, the Zephaga part of the list, the top end. So of course we have Medieval. It's kind of good in a lot of decks, especially in this because it already has Alliance on it. So again, you can have Alliance multiple times, you can evolve into it, you can also, of course, just play it for 7 if you suspend 2 Digimon. So that's pretty handy. And of course it has its Vortex because it's a Vortex warrior, and then it has the effect that everyone knows about. Maybe they don't like it. I think it's fine. It's good. So I play it. It's got the when digivolving, suspend 1 Digimon, and then delete 1 of the opponent's Digimon with 8,000 DP or lower, and then for every suspended Digimon, add 3,000 DP to that number. So you're effectively deleting an 11,000 DP or lower, or more than that, depending on how many Digimon are suspended. And then of course it has the all turns where and it's just once per turn you can activate the when digivolving. So of course, if you evolve into it, you get the when digivolving, and then you can play something to activate the all turns because that one's once per turn. The when digivolving is not, so you can do it twice a turn, but only if you're evolving to it on that turn. So that makes sense. It's only a 2 of honestly, if you didn't have a Medieval Gallant, you could probably go for another of the Zephaga, like the Zephaga from EX7. You could go for 2 more Zephaga Aces. It's not that necessary. It's just kind of nice to have. It's nice to have in any green or red deck. You can even play it in non-green and red decks. It just works better if you can evolve into it because you get to use the when digivolving as well as the all turns once per turn. So if you don't have a Medieval Gallant and you want to build this list, it's not the end of the world. Just swap it in for something else. Maybe you could, yeah, as I said, you could use the other Zephaga from EX7. That's good. Bot decking is very good. Go for 2 more Zephaga Aces because sometimes I feel like 2 isn't enough. You can even go for 1 more Zephaga Ace or 1 EX7 Zeph. You could even go for the War Greymon Ace if you really wanted to, because it can still evolve onto your level 5s, and of course you can warp from your Agumon if you meet the conditions. So it's not the end of the world if you don't have it. the main piece of this is the starter deck Zephaga, so it's not the end of the world if you don't have the Medieval Gallant. Then of course we have the Zephaga Ace, so this can evolve on from your level 5s obviously, but it can also evolve onto your starter deck Zephaga and your Medieval. So this is one of my favourite cards. Again, bot decking is very important. I find especially in the current meta, it is good to have an ace card that bot decks. Unless of course your opponent has protection, but even then your stack might be big enough just to block it. So pretty handy there. So it has piercing, it has vortex, it has blocker, it has the all turns once per turn when any Digimon suspend, this Digimon may unsuspend. So that kind of works with the starter deck Zephaga if you have both on field at the time. And then it has the on play and when Digivolving, suspend one Digimon. Then for every 2, bot deck 1. So very handy, just a good card. Again, if you don't have the 2 Medievals, you can up this to 4 or whatever. It is very useful to have. I kind of miss having it as a 3 of because I'm not always going to see it as a 2 of. I might see 1, but if it's in security, I'm kind of like, oh, I can't get that back. So it is really nice to have it. It's good in the deck. Then of course we have the main part of the deck, which is the starter deck Zephagamon. Of course it has Vortex, it has the when Digivolving, suspend one Digimon, unsuspend one Digimon. So if you target itself to suspend and then target itself to unsuspend, you can get the immunity straight away. And that immunity is the all turns once per turn. When any Digimon unsuspend for the turn, this Digimon isn't affected by the effects of your opponent's Digimon and gets plus 3000 DP. So it's only 11,000, so then it gets to 14,000. And then of course more if you have any of the inheritables that give you the DP buff, the Palmon all turns, or even the your turn plus 2,000 from the other Digimon. It's just handy to have, so it just gets that stack a little bit higher in DP. So yes, this is the main part of the deck, having Zephagamon hopefully on your Agumon that has Reboot, but if it's not the end of the world if you have any other of the level 3s, but it is nice to have that Reboot in that stack. So those are my level 6s. Next we have the option card. We only run 4 option cards and they're all the same. It's the Our Courage United one. So if you have a Digimon or Tamer with the adventure trait on field, ignore the color requirements, so you don't need to have a black source. You can just have anything with the adventure trait, which you pretty much do. So the main is that you draw 2, so you draw 2 cards for the cost of 3. That's fine, especially if you're trying to look for your Vortex pieces or any pieces in general. Card draw is always useful. Then it has the all turns of when any of your level 5 or higher Digimon, so any trait of Digimon, so it doesn't have to be adventure, it can be any of your level 6s. So when any of those leave the battlefield, you delay, and then you may play 1 level 5 or lower Digimon card with the adventure trait from your hand without paying the cost. So you could effectively just play any card you want. You can do Togemon, evolve quickly to Lilymon, and then do the suspend bot deck. You can do the Mega Kabuterimon, unsuspend, and then suspend something. So that is fairly useful, and that's an all turns effect. So if your opponent just blown up one of your guys, you can bring back some Digimon. Of course, this means you can't use it if your opponent has a floodgate that stops you from playing Digimon by effects, but for the most part, very useful to have. Then we have our Tamers. This is a fairly Tamer heavy deck. So we have one of the Tai and Izzy, which give your adventure trait Digimon blocker. That's pretty handy, especially because none of these really have blocker except for Zephaga Ace. And it has the same effect that all the adventure trait Tamers have from the starter deck, which is your turn. When any Digimon cards with the adventure trait would be played from your hand, suspend this Tamer, reduce the cost by 1. So all of the adventure Tamers have that. Very handy, especially if you want to play this and you have 4 adventure Tamers, you're playing Togemon for free. And then because you have enough colours, you can evolve into one of your level 5s. So you can build back up to your level 6s. And of course, if you have Medieval on field, that also means it's activating the all turns once per turn. So that is handy. Then we have 3 of the Joe and Mimi. So this one still has that same your turn, but it has the start of main. If you have a Digimon with the adventure trait, gain 1 memory. So that's why I have 3 of these. Same with the Sora and Kari. This is the exact same as the Mimi and Joe, except it's in different colours. It's red and yellow instead of green and blue. So if you have both of them, that means you have 4 colours of adventure trait tamers. So that pretty much means you can use any of the effects from your Digimon. So they're both pretty good. Then I have 1 of the Memory Setter Shoto. I saw other decks were running the Tai, but the reason why I went for Shoto rather than the Tai, other than the reason I just don't have the Tai from BT21, is because of the your turn when one of your Digimon attacks your opponent's Digimon, suspend this tamer to redirect it to another Digimon or player. So if your opponent has 0 security and they have suspended Digimon, you can declare Vortex into the suspended Digimon and then suspend Shoto to swing for game. Very handy, it's how I've won a lot of games with my main Zephagamon deck, so it's kind of just there. It's only a one-off because it's not necessary to win, and you don't really need to be set on 3 memory anyway, because you aren't really starving for memory because of the tamers. But it is just kind of nice to have. That's why it's only a 1-of instead of a 2-of. Nice to have, but you can win without it. You can't probably win without all the other tamer cards because that's the majority of the deck, but it is nice to have just as the 1-of. We have 1 of the Matt and TK. Similar to the Tai and Izzy, it just has the same your turn, suspend this Digimon, reduce play cost by 1, but it also has the your turn, all of your level 5 or higher Digimon with the adventure trait gain rush. So similar to this one, giving blocker to all Digimon with the adventure trait, this one gives rush to 5 or higher. So if you are playing your level 4, suspending 4 tamers, getting it out for free, and then evolving for free into one of your level 5s, you now have rush, so you can swing with that. That's pretty handy, but not as useful as the other tamers, I find. I do rather have the memory from the Sora and Kari and Mimi and Joe rather than the blocker or the rush. So that's why they're kind of sitting as 1-ofs, and also because extra colours for the effects here, but I kind of prefer these ones because these 2 have unique colours and they also get me memory. So again, the Sora and Kari is exactly the same as the Mimi and Joe, except it's in different colours. So that's it for my Vortex Adventure deck. I kind of wanted to show it off because it is kind of an interesting deck. It's a little bit of a different spin on the Zephagamon deck. Again, you can do this for pretty cheap. You can just pick up the Adventure starter decks and the Zephagamon starter deck. I don't think the Zephagamon Ace is even that expensive at the moment. It's like a few dollars, which isn't that bad for a secret. So that one's pretty good as well. Medieval's the only reason that this deck is... why this says that it's above $100 is because of the Medievals. Again, as I mentioned, they're not as necessary. The main point of the deck is the starter deck Zephaga. You can put in anything else if you don't have the Medievals. But other than that, that's my thoughts on the deck. It's pretty decent, I find. And especially because the first time that I ran it, I won a locals with it, which is kind of surprising. Usually when I play a deck for the first time, I go to a locals. I might take 1 win, but other than that, I'm kind of like, oh, you know, I'm learning a new deck. This one, while I was still learning a new deck, I was a lot slower than I would have been playing my Zephaga deck because I'm still learning all the mechanics, learning what the cards do. It does sort of play pretty easily, and you kind of just, as long as you read the cards, it is easy. But if you don't read the cards, you're going to miss a lot of triggers and you're going to miss a lot of the point of the deck. But it is nice to have a fairly cheap-ish deck that runs pretty well. I can see myself running this again and again and again. My Zephagamon deck, the main deck, is still my main deck, but this is a pretty decent deck. It's pretty fun. If I ever feel like playing Zephagamon, but I don't want to play Zephagamon, I can play this deck. I probably wouldn't put in any more of the Vortex pieces in this. I did for a while think about putting the EX7 Shoto in, which is the Piercing Blocker Unsuspend Vortex Warrior one, but I didn't find it as necessary, and even then, that's why that the Shoto with the Mem Setter is there, because it's just a one-of. I did originally think of like 2 of the EX7 Shoto and 2 of the Starter Deck Shoto, but I really need those Adventure Traded Tamers as well. So this is my list. I like it. I hope you like it too, kind of thing. But it is a fun thing to do. It is a fun deck to run. And I never thought I'd be so thankful to see an Agumon in my hand. Like, yes! Agumon. But in any case, those are my thoughts about my Adventure Vortex deck, built from more or less 3 different starter decks technically, because the Adventure ones were split in 2, and the Vortex one is the 3rd. But in any case, thanks for watching this video. If you want to leave a comment, please do so. If you have any questions about this deck or anything you want to say about it, let me know in the comment section below. Like this video for me playing a different deck. Kind of, I guess. Like, the day that I came into locals with it, someone asked, oh, so you just came 7th at regionals. Are you going to play Zephagamon tonight? And like, technically, I think I am, but I'm not playing the Zephagamon deck. So like this video for that. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'm trying to get to 20,000 subscribers by the end of the year. I'm pretty doubtful, but I'm trying my best, so subscribe if you haven't already. If you have subscribed, tell your neighbors, tell your enemies, tell your opponents across the table from you at a Digimon Locals. And of course, I'll see you in the next video. Bye!